Penandar Pau, Croeso, welcome and good afternoon to everyone. This is the first English revision session, and today Mrs. Thomas is going to be focusing on reading questions. It's good to see so many of you here, although I can't actually see you. She'll be looking at low tariff questions, explain and summary. And what she's going to do is go through, model some of the question types, give you some top tips on how to respond, and she'll provide you with an opportunity to refresh your memories about how to answer these questions and what they look like, and for you to also have a go at answering yourselves. Please use the question and answer section on the top right if you want to respond to any of the questions, which will be good and helpful to Mrs. Thomas as we're going through, but also obviously if you've got any questions and you want some clarification on some of the information she's given. Okay, so hope you find this useful. Mrs. Thomas, I think it's all good, and now it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to go through some English language GCSE questions from the Unit 2 and Unit 3 question papers. So first of all, a few introductions. So my name's Mrs. Thomas, and I'll be presenting the lesson today. And we've also got Miss Bethel, who introduced the lesson just now. She's available, as she said, during the lesson to answer any questions you might have, or to actually respond to my questions on the Q&A function, so you can do that as well. The session's 40 minutes long, but it's going to be recorded, so if you feel that you do miss anything, you can go back and watch the lesson again. I believe you will all be sent links for the recording as well, so it's something to refer back to in the future. Okay, so we'll get started. So first thing I want to, So first thing we'll go through is some learning objectives. Okay, is my screen still visible, Miss? Yeah.
It's all absolutely perfect from this side, Miss.
Excellent, thank you. So by the end of this lesson then you'll be able to understand what a low tariff question is on the Unit 2 and Unit 3 English language papers. So we talk about low tariff questions. It really just means low mark questions. Okay, you'll know about the types of questions on the Unit 2 and Unit 3 English language papers. So I'm going to start you off with the low tariff ones this week. In next week's session, we will look at the higher mark reading questions. Okay, and then you'll understand how to find the answers for these questions and how to respond to them. So I'm going to give you certain structures to use for some of the 5-mark questions, the explain and the summarise, as Miss mentioned before. I will give you structures to use on how to respond to those types of questions. So as I said there, so you're going to respond to a 5-mark question, such as summarise or an explain question. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is just decide what a low tariff question is. Please feel free to ask any questions as we're going along, and if you feel that I am going too fast, just drop a note in the Q&A section and I will slow down for you. So a low tariff question on the reading papers is normally worth between 1 and 8 marks. Anything over that, you have to provide an extended answer, which, as I said, we will go through next week. The answers for the low tariff questions can normally be found in the text that you read. So when you have a Unit 2 or a Unit 3 paper, you'll be provided with a resource paper as well, which has lots of different texts in there for you to read. So it might be a web page, there might be instructions, there might be a copy of a novel, an extract from a novel. So all of these different things, all of the answers will be in those texts, and sometimes you're asked to copy directly from the text. Now, it is in your best interest to attempt all low tariff questions, as they could make a difference to your grade. So sometimes you might feel you're not going to spend any time on those 1, 2, 3 mark questions, but it might actually be the difference between a grade. Okay, so you really need to just have a go at them, and if you're unsure, if you can't find the answer anywhere, then just take a guess. So take an educated guess. Okay, but please don't leave them blank because it's not in your best interest to do that. Okay, so we're going to move on to the 1 mark questions first. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of these 1 mark questions. So this one is it's really a copy task. So you have to find the answer within the text. Okay, so if I just read it out to you. So text A is a definition of a payday loan from an online encyclopedia. So payday loans are short-term loans for small amounts of money. They're available from high street shops and internet sites. Payday loans can be easy to get, but interest rates are very high. There may be other ways for you to sort out your short-term money problem. So think about the alternatives before you borrow from a payday lender. If you decide to get a payday loan, shop around and compare the interest and charges before you borrow. And make sure you are clear about what will happen if you can't pay it back. So it's a very short text, but it gives you lots of information that they'll then ask you questions on. So when you look at the question, always be aware of what the question is asking you to do. So in this question, it says, according to the text, what is a payday loan? Okay, so you should be aware of that part of the question according to the text, because you're looking in the text for the answer. You should use words from the text rather than rely on your own knowledge. Okay, so can you type your answer into the chat for me now? So according to the text, what is a payday loan? And I'm going to give you a minute or so to type your answer into the chat. Okay, and also to remember, you don't have to write in full sentences for low mark questions. They might just be looking for a phrase or, you know, not a full sentence. So you don't have to write a payday loan is, you can just write the answer straight in there. Okay, Miss, are we getting any answers on the chat?
Not at the moment, Miss. Hang on, let me just scroll down. No, what I've been doing, Miss, so you know, from this side, as you've been talking, what I've been doing is writing the key bits of information that you've said in the chat so that people can pick out the information. At the minute, no one's brave enough to answer that particular question about according to the text.
Come on, guys.
So, yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen, Miss. We can try. It might be an idea perhaps just to go through and highlight in the text where where that information is, perhaps at the moment, Miss.
If you look at the text here, it says there, if you can see my cursor, in the first sentence, it tells us the answer straight away. So it says payday loans are short-term loans for small amounts of money. So the question just requires you to copy that information from the text. So the correct answer would be a short-term loan for a small amount of money. As I said before, you don't have to write that full sentence. You're just looking for the answer copied from the text. So a short-term loan for a small amount of money would be the correct answer, and that would get you 1 mark. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one then. So there's a 3 mark question here. So again, this is a straightforward, it's on exactly the same text, as you'd get several different questions on each text. Okay, so this is a straightforward find and copy retrieval question. You should identify the correct parts of the text relating to the question and write 3 separate points using the bullet points provided. So normally on the question paper, on the response paper, sorry, they would have bullet points for where you should write your 3 things. Okay, so you just use those bullet points. You know that it's a 3 mark question, so you're looking for 3 things, and it tells you in the question that you are looking for 3 things. So does anyone want to have a go at this now? Can you type in the chat now one of the things that you should do before getting a payday loan? Come on, have a go.
Miss, what I was going to say is, would you suggest this, that, for example, obviously, if it's worth 3 marks, you would give 3 different pieces of information?
That's right, yes. You need to find 3 separate points which answer the question. So according to the text, 3 different things you should do before getting a payday loan.
So effectively, each point that's made is worth 1 mark. Yes,
that's correct. Yeah,
that's correct. That's okay.
Anyone?
Miss, I'm not convinced people are confident enough to jump in the chat and interact with you. Don't take it personally or anything. Don't take it personally.
Okay, well, we'll have a look at this text then, and it tells you again. So you are just copying things from the text. So it says, if we look here, it says payday loans can be easy to get, but interest rates are very high. There may be other ways for you to sort out your short-term money problem. So think about the alternatives before you borrow from a payday lender. Okay, so that's one thing that you should do before getting a payday loan. You should think about alternatives before you borrow. Okay, if you then decide to get a payday loan, you should, and then it lists the things that you should do. You should shop around. You should compare the interest and charges. And also you should make sure you are clear about what will happen if you can't pay it back. So there's 4 different things really there that would be acceptable in the mark scheme. So I have listed all 4 on here, but you would only need to choose 3. So the 4 answers that I've listed there, think about the alternatives before you borrow, shop around, compare the interest and charges before you borrow, and make sure you are clear about what will happen if you can't pay it back. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of the types of, some of the types of short questions that you might get. So remember, you would get several different questions on each text. You might get a 1 mark question, you might get a 3 mark question, sometimes they're 2 mark questions. So you need to really be aware that there's a lot of them are just find and copy. So you're just actually copying from the text. So don't be scared of doing that on this type of question. Okay, there's no need for you to have prior knowledge really. You need to just be able to read that text and be able to find the answers within that.
Miss, as well, perhaps in terms of revision strategies and approaching this, obviously it's a bit different, isn't it, because we're working online.
Yeah.
But what's your advice in terms of using highlighters and things like that in an exam?
A good point, Miss, actually. It's definitely an idea to use a highlighter. I did that, if you look before, let me go back to the previous slide. Okay, let me see. Okay, so if you look here, I have actually highlighted sorry, I've gone back again. I've highlighted the question, so it's always a good idea, and I'm sure your teachers will make you aware of this anyway, but if you're going into an exam and you're having to analyse text, be that in literature or language, you should always have a highlighter handy, and you should be highlighting the question, so you can drill down to what you were looking for. Okay, and also you should be highlighting the text to find the answer. So in normal circumstances, I would have highlighted, for this question here, I would have highlighted the 3 things that I was going to write down. So I would highlight, think about the alternatives before you borrow, shop around, compare the interest and charges, make sure you're clear. So I would highlight all of those things on that paper. Yes, that is a really good point, Miss. You should always have a highlighter available.
And in a question like that, perhaps where it's worth 3, but say if you're reading, I'm just putting myself in a student's position, and you actually look and you think, hang on a minute, there's 4 here. What's your advice on that? Would you say, right, if you think there are 4, you can write all 4, or would you just say cancel 1? And what would you suggest? Yeah. Because it would unnerve me, I think, to find 4 if it's only worth 3.
I would definitely only write 3. Okay, it's just because of time limitations. You're limited to time in an exam situation. So 3 is enough. On the exam paper, it normally will only give you space for 3 anyway. So there's no need to add extra information. Okay, whichever combination of those 3 you use, you will get 3, the marks for it. Okay, and if you do add a 4th one, you won't be penalised for it, but just a mark won't be awarded for it. Okay, so they'll just look for the 3 things that they're looking for, if you know what I mean. Is that a clear, miss?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right, so we'll move on to the next one then. So we're going to move to a multiple choice question. Okay, you're all familiar with these, I'm sure. So some of the text that you may get on the paper, you will have seen these before. The infographics. Okay, so the pictures really with information on them. So on this one you can see that it's a graph of payday loan statistics, and it compares the annual calls to deadline against the value of the payday loans industry. Okay, and it's making you look at those statistics and compare them. It's more like maths almost, this is. So you know, this is where your math skills come into their own really. So it's the information it says at the top there. It says in just 3 years the value of the payday loan industry grew from £900 million to £2.2 billion. This is in direct correlation to the number of calls made concerning payday loans to the charity deadline. And then it shows us the graph of that. So it shows us each year and how both have increased, you know, at the same time, really. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, your multiple choice question is here. Okay, the text refers to the correlation between the payday loan industry and the number of calls to the charity deadline. Select one definition from the list below that best describes correlation. Now, please, you know, try and have a go at this. It obviously relies on some of your own knowledge, even though it's a 1-mark question. It relies on your own knowledge of word definitions. But if you're unsure, then just take a guess. So I'm going to dare you now to type one of those letters into the chat, A, B, C, D or E. Okay, I'm going to give you 1 minute to do that. Miss, keep me informed.
I will. So we're looking for the meaning of correlation.
That's right.
It just looks a very long question, doesn't it? Just
It does.
just for that information.
For the sake of 1 mark, yes.
Yeah.
Any responses, miss?
No, not at the minute. Okay. One thing that I have put in the chat, miss, that I think some students that I work with find useful is once the word has been identified in the question, sometimes going back to the information and finding that word in the context. Yeah, and rereading that sentence sometimes, because this is quite a high level piece of vocabulary that's quite precise, isn't it? Do you find that? And then what they can do is almost put each of those answers in the sentence instead of the word correlation to see if it makes sense. Would you suggest that? Yeah, so if you look here, it says, I've you know, put this on here. This is in direct correlation to the number of calls made concerning payday loans to the charity deadline. Okay, so Miss is quite right. You know, you should go back and read it within the context of the text that they've given you. And a good thing to do here is to eliminate things that you know are incorrect straight away. So, for example, this one here, the relationship between 2 people. Well, this doesn't relate to a relationship between 2 people at all. They're talking about 2 different things. They're talking about a relationship between payday loans and the charity deadline. So it's nothing to do with people. So we could cross C out straight away. The way that 2 things are the same. Okay, well, perhaps, you know, you could say that the way that the payday loan industry has risen and the call to deadline has risen, you could say that they are the same. Okay, and then the way 2 things are different, well, they're not different because we've already seen that the graph shows that they grew at the same rate. Okay, and then the other one, the line drawn between 2 things, well, it's not really talking about it in that way. You know, we're not drawing a line between the 2 things. We're talking about the 2 things together, aren't we? So it is almost a relationship between the 2 things. So would you say, Miss, on things like this, I like that idea of getting rid of the answers that are just going to be incorrect and sort of like the red herrings to it. Is that a bit like 50-50 in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when you take out two of the options?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you're kind of crossing out the ones you know that it definitely isn't. Okay, and then you have to think of, you know, well, how does one of these things, you know, how does the amount that the payday loans industry's grown, how does it relate to the number of calls to the debt line? So, you know, when we're talking about the two things, we'd probably talk about how one thing affects the other. Okay, so if payday loans industry has grown, then it's obviously going to have an effect on the number of calls that are made to the charity debt line. Okay, so it wouldn't be about the way two things are different. It wouldn't be about the way two things are the same, because, you know, although they're same in terms of them growing, you know, that they're a different need almost. You know, some people need loans, but then because of that, as a result of that, they need this help from charity debt lines because they're struggling to pay the money back. Okay, so the answer is actually A. Okay, the effect one thing has on another. So because the number of the number of payday loans has increased, people are struggling a lot more to pay these loans back, and as a result, the effect is that they're having an increase in the calls to charity debt line. I hope that's clear. It is a tricky question, as Miss said. You know, it's a tricky word to work out, correlation. And if you've never seen it before, you know, you might, you know, not know what the meaning of it is. But you just have to, as I said right at the beginning, just take a guess. You know, use your inference skills and use your, you know, try and put the word back in the sentence where it was and in the context that it's meant in, and try and work the answer out. So I hope that's clear.
Yeah, Miss, what I've said perhaps as a technique or a strategy for this, obviously I like the idea of removing the options that are the red herrings, and I think that's like your 50-50 to narrow it down.
Yeah.
And then what I've said is perhaps just take a bit longer on it and take your time to read it carefully. Yeah. Because I think the first time, if you look at it, it can be perhaps a bit overwhelming. Yeah. But then if you've got rid of them and just reread them very carefully and kept your focus on highlighting what it could be, that would perhaps help narrow it down. Yeah, that's it. And I think, you know, like Miss said at the beginning, it is a long question for such a small mark, isn't it? But yeah, you know, that mark could make the difference between a grade for you. So it's really worth having a go with it, you know, having a good look at the question, reading it carefully and trying to work it out yourself. Okay, so we'll move on then. So the next question is a 2-mark explain question. Sometimes you will get a 2-mark explain question, and we're going to move on to 5-mark ones again. So this question tests the ability to refer to evidence within text. So the evidence is, you know, sections of the text, so quotations from the text. And you can use your inference and deduction skills to retrieve and analyse information. So whereas the previous questions have asked you to find the information within the text, this one goes a little bit further because it wants you to give a reason for the answer that you're giving. Okay, so where it asks you to explain, you need to give reasons. Okay, so for this one, it says use the text to explain what has happened to the payday loan industry and the number of calls to debt line since 2007. So we've already touched on this, the fact that this graph here shows that both the payday loans, the annual calls to debt line, sorry, in blue, and the value of the payday loans industry has increased, okay, at the same rate, really. You know, they've both gone up in the same rate. You can see that curve there, and you need to think about what the relationship is between these two data sets. So, you know, the fact that they've both gone up, and it says there, the text says 20,013 calls related to payday loans were made during 2012, a 94% increase, and up 4,200% since the financial crisis began in 2007. So there's extra information there to help us with our explanation.
Okay, so you need to try and use these connectives or a connective when you're given a reason. So you might use because or due to or as a result of. So that might help you, to structure your response. Okay, so then if we go on to the next slide, here we go. So it says use the text to explain what has happened to the payday loan industry and the number of calls to deadline since 2007. So the simple option would be to just say, well, both the numbers of both of them have gone up. The payday loan industry, the value of it has gone up, and also the annual calls to deadline have gone up. But that's not enough information, so you wouldn't get any marks awarded for that. Okay, because you're just stating that both have increased without making a connection between the two. So you need to state why they've increased. Okay, so there's an example there. Payday loans and calls to deadline have increased since 2007. There's no reason, so you wouldn't get any marks for that. You've not really explained it. Okay, so the next one, you might award 1 mark for candidates who demonstrate an understanding that the value of the payday loan industry and the number of calls to deadline has increased at the same rate since 2007. Okay, so that's the key difference. Okay, there you get 1 mark because you're recognising that both payday loans and calls to deadline have increased at the same rate. Okay, so we can see that graph. They're both travelling at the same rate all the way across. The curve is the same, so we know that, we can say that, but it's still not enough to gain the full 2 marks. Why have they increased at the same rate? Okay, that's what the examiner wants to know. So this would be where we put our reasoning now. So the example at the bottom then, both payday loans and calls to deadline have increased at the same rate since 2007. So that's exactly the same as the response before, but then we're putting our reason. Because of the start of the financial crisis, because we're told that here on the graph, since the start of the financial crisis began in 2007, which shows that people had more financial troubles and needed money. So the fact that there is a financial crisis, people are lending more, and therefore, they're struggling to pay that debt back as well because of this financial crisis. That's then the reason why the calls to deadline have increased. So it's that full answer that they need for that 2 marks. I know it seems quite a lot for 2 marks, but it's that reason that they need for your answer, that explanation. That's why the question, states that you have to explain.
Miss, what I've put in the chat is basically give your answer, which means using part of the question stem perhaps in the keyword. Is this correct? And then I've said use a quotation, and then on the end of it, give your reason using perhaps one of those connectives like because or as a result of consequently.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For a 2 mark question, though, you might not necessarily have to use a quotation from the text. You're just looking at the information that's there. Okay. For a 2 mark one, I think when we move on to the 5 mark, you definitely need to use evidence. But I think this is just trying to explain the correlation between the two data sets.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we'll move on to the next one then. So the next one is a 5 mark explain question. Okay, so you will get quite a few 5 mark questions checkered through that the papers. Okay, so you might have an explain question. You could have a 5 mark how question. We'll go through a 5 mark summary question at the moment, but I wanted us to just reflect on how you would first of all approach a 5 mark question. Okay, so first of all, we're going to always on our questions, we're going to look how many marks the question is worth. So we know this one's a 5 mark question, so you need to make at least as many points as there are marks. So in a 5 mark question, you make 5 points. In a 10 mark question, you would make 10 points. Okay, now what I would do next is with your highlighter, I would highlight the keywords in the question and find synonyms to help you to understand it. Okay, so I'll go through that in a moment, but find words. You might have to rephrase the question so that you understand what it's asking you to do. What we find quite a lot on GCSE questions is that if a student doesn't understand the question, they might completely answer it in the wrong way, and they might not then be awarded any marks because they've not actually answered the question that's being asked of them. So it's really, really important that you highlight the question and know exactly what the examiner's looking for. Okay, you would then track through the text, highlighting evidence that answers the question. And then you would show how the evidence suggests an answer to the question, which I will show you in a moment in the structure. You'd use the keywords of the question in every point. Again, I will show you that in the response structure. And you'd use connectives to start every point. Okay, so this is a good way to remember how to structure your responses for each of these questions. So if you have a look at the text first of all, and the question. So explain how this payday loan company makes itself responsible and trustworthy. So the first thing I would think, well, what is the question asking me to do? So it's asking me to explain first of all, so I know that I need to give reasons. And then I need to know what these words mean. So what does responsible mean? What does trustworthy mean? And I would perhaps, note down different words that they want me to think about. So how is it fair? How does it look after others? How does it do the right thing for its customers, its lenders? Okay, and then trustworthy. How is it honest? How is it believable? How is it reliable? Okay, so you need to really understand the question. It's really important. So you'll need to make a comment on what the company says and explain why this makes them sound responsible or trustworthy. So like I said in the last slide, you need to refer back to the question. Now I'll show you an example of that in a moment. And for this question, because it's a 5-mark question, you should always use evidence from the text. Okay, you need to be able to refer to evidence within the text and directly and get that evidence, put it in your response, and kind of evidence suggests to give a reason for the evidence that you've chosen.
Miss, can I just check there?
Yeah.
When it says about using quotations,
Yeah.
is there any way to actually say see that in a question? So, for example, would the question say referring closely to the text, or does it not do that for explain questions?
It might well do, but I haven't got anything to hand for that.
Okay.
I did find this on the mark scheme, which says this question tests the ability to refer to evidence within text.
So that's for the 5-mark question.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
To evaluate and reflect on the ways in which text may be interpreted differently according to the reader and distinguishing between facts or evidence and opinions, bias and argument. So it's asking you to get that evidence from those texts as to, and then give a reason why you've chosen that evidence, how it shows that this company is responsible and trustworthy. Okay, is that okay, Miss?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, so here's our text then. So we're going to find ways. I'm going to annotate this text for you to show how it makes it sound responsible and trustworthy. So if we read here, it says, as a responsible lender, we assess every application on an individual basis. We make sure our customer care team can't see reasons behind our decisions for your security. We consider many pieces of data and perform credit checks to make fast, accurate decisions. We assess all applications carefully and only offer loans to people we think we can afford to pay them back and never guarantee approval. And then in bold type here, and the font's a little bit bigger, it says we don't lend to everyone. You must be a UK resident, over 18, a bank account holder with a debit card, a mobile phone owner. So what I've done is I've annotated this text. So I would recommend that in an exam situation, you also do the same. So for this one, I've looked at this. So I've highlighted, or I would highlight if I could have on this, every application. So that implies that they give individual care and attention to every application. okay, which makes them sound responsible because they're looking at everyone's application on an individual basis. Okay, the next one I've highlighted there is your security. So the phrase your security makes them sound safe and trustworthy. So as a reader, when we're reading that, it makes them sound like, oh, you know, they would be a secure company to go to because they're looking after my security as a lender. Okay, the next one, many pieces of data. So that shows that they're responsible because they look at many pieces of data, they perform credit checks to make sure that lenders are eligible for the money that they're lending, so they're not putting people in a difficult situation. And then they have a customer care team, which shows that, again, that they're trustworthy and responsible because they look after their customers. So, you know, we could use the fact that they have a customer care team as one of our points. And then the final one I've written there, we don't lend to everyone. So, you know, the fact that they don't lend to everyone makes them responsible because they wouldn't lend to people who, you know, they haven't done checks on, or they aren't a UK resident, or they're not over 18. So all of these things are taken into consideration. Okay, so that's how I would annotate a text. So I would highlight the point, I would then annotate. And the reason that I would annotate is when you go and write up your response, it makes it much easier. You can see straight away the quotation that you're looking at and what you're going to write about it. Okay, so here is the response now, a model response. So I would always use a connective at the beginning of my sentence. Okay, so I'm highlighting the fact that I'm writing 5 different pieces of information. I'm putting those in my response to gain those 5 marks. So first, the text states that every application is considered, which suggests that they are trustworthy because they give individual care and attention. So we're just putting a little bit more information in what we've already highlighted and annotated. So I'm using that which suggests, okay, because we don't know precisely what the Payday Loans company are trying to tell us, but we can only make inferences based on the information that we've been given. And I would always use the question in the answer, so which suggests that they are trustworthy or suggests that they are responsible because, and that's my explain part. I'm giving a reason there. I'm saying because. Okay, so next one, secondly, they highlight the reader's security. Okay, so again, I'm taking that from the text. I'm putting my quotation marks in there, which makes the company sound safe and trustworthy. So again, I'm taking words from the question to put in there. The next one, additionally, they look at many pieces of data, which suggests they're responsible as they will check carefully whether someone should have a loan. Okay, so again, I'm just putting those points that I've highlighted and annotating into a response. Next, they mention their customer care team, which implies they are trustworthy because the reader will be looked after by the company. Okay, so again, I'm explaining it, I'm putting my evidence in from the text. And then finally, the text says they don't lend to everyone, which suggests they are responsible because they are thorough about who they decide to lend to. So remember, they make all these checks, they make sure that, you know, they only lend to certain people. So that's our reason for thinking that they're responsible. Okay, I hope that's quite clear for you. It's difficult to ascertain whether or not it's clear unless you want to put a question or answer in the chat.
Miss, what I've done on that is, as you've spoken, I've tracked through and put some of the sort of response frames. So I've done things like firstly ... because, and then secondly with the quotation, and then ... because.
Yeah.
And it is, do you think it's just about tracking the text, getting a piece of information, but then doing something with it to explain it?
That's exactly it, Miss. Yeah, so
keeping it precise, really precise. Keyword quotations, do you think, not whole chunks of text and things like that?
It's remember, you will be limited to time, so it's not in your best interest to choose, you know, massive long sentences with a quotation in. A couple of words will be enough you know, for you to be able to give a reason as to why you've chosen that. Okay, as long as you can give that reason, you're saying that because, how it shows they're trustworthy, how it shows they're responsible. Okay, you don't need a lot of information in your quotation.
And you don't have to be, it's not like a piece of writing, is it, where, you know, we want you to be flamboyant and original. It's almost like a formula, do you think, Miss? You don't
Absolutely.
get extra marks for originality on this, I suppose. Do you agree?
Absolutely not. Yeah. So and the same goes for, you know, your vocabulary, you know, in the writing section of the paper, that's very much, you know, important. You know, the fact that you have to use different vocabulary, flamboyant techniques, etc. But with this, you don't. It's just a straightforward reading. Read the text, provide the answer, use a structure because it helps you. So I always teach my students to use a structure because it helps them get the answer and answer the question. Okay. So I'm aware that we're running out of time really, so I'll go through the summarised question then. So again, summarised question, you need to check your understanding of summary. The summary is a shortened version. It doesn't require direct copying, and in actual fact, you shouldn't copy from the text. Answers should be in your own words, like an overview of what's been asked of you. So check how many questions a mark is. I've never seen a summarised question for more than 5 marks. So generally they are 5 marks, but again, check, you might need more than 5 points. Again, highlight the keywords in the question, track through the text, highlighting evidence that answers the question, and most importantly, use your own words to make points about the evidence you've found. So you mustn't copy from the text with this one. You're putting the text into your own words. That's what summarise means. Okay, so if you have a look at the question here, it says in your own words. So often it says that in the question. Sometimes though it might not, but you have to be aware that wherever it says summarise, it means in your own words. Summarise 5 disadvantages of payday loans. So we're looking for the disadvantages of payday loans. Okay, it tells you how many points you need and the disadvantages, so anything that's unfavourable about them, anything that's negative about them, any bad things that you can see in that text about payday loans. Now the question paper will often give you 5 bullet points, okay, sometimes it doesn't though, so just be aware that, you know, it's just bullet points that they want on this. Okay, they don't, you know, want reams and reams of information. It is a summarise. You're shortening the information into 5 sentences really. Okay, so we'll have a look at what I've done here. So first of all, I've highlighted the text. So remember, I'm looking for disadvantages. So you could look at this high cost credit. It could risk scarring your finances, which means that in the long term, you know, it might affect your finances long term. It could leave you repaying many more times than you borrow, much more than you borrowed. They're often easy to get, which is perhaps a bad thing because people might not have time to think about it before they, you know, commit to these loans. Some even do it on their mobiles while they're drunk. So that shows that sometimes they're too easy to get. You know, people can get them when they're under the influence of alcohol or whatever else, you know, they can find it too easy to get these loans. And then it highlights this again, but it's that very ease which is the danger. So it's saying that the ease of getting these loans, it's dangerous. And then you can also be stung by tricks used by payday loan firms. So, you know, you might be told certain things about these loans that are incorrect, you know, but it's just to get you to sign up to these loans. Okay, so there is more than 5 points there, but obviously you don't need to find 5 points, but I've just highlighted more just to give you an idea of the types of things that they're looking for there. They're looking for the disadvantages of payday loans. And then your structure for a summarised question. It's really straightforward. So all you're doing is these areas that you've highlighted, I've just put them then in my own words. Okay, so if you look at the box here, it tells you Okay, so they cost a lot, so I've highlighted high cost there. So in my response here, I would put payday loans cost a lot. Okay, so I'm just interpreting those words and putting them in a sentence. Okay, a very short sentence, but that's all I need because I'm summarising the information. I'm trying to give this information in a short way to people who might not want to read through all the bits and pieces. Okay, so it risks scarring their finances. It could cause longer term problems with your money. Okay, so it's telling me that, you know, it could risk scarring my finances. So I'm just shortening that and saying it can cause longer term problems with your money. Okay, we're paying many times more than you borrowed. So the cost of loans is not proportionate to the amount borrowed. Or you could put something simpler. You could put the cost of loans is much higher than the amount that you borrowed. Okay, there doesn't seem to be much of a standard of care, so they're drunk, so there doesn't seem to be much of a standard or care for the customer if you can get a loan when you're drunk. So you could say something like the loans companies are irresponsible, they can offer the loans are easy to get even when you're drunk. Okay, so it's entirely up to you how you rephrase that. I've just done it in my own way here. And then stung by tricks used by payday loan firms. So the companies who offer the loan can sometimes take advantage of people. So I've just again put that in my own words there. But that hopefully just shows you an idea of how to interpret those phrases that you're looking for and trying to put them in your own words. Because if you just copied out these 5 phrases here and you put those in your response, you wouldn't get any marks at all. You wouldn't get any marks for copying the text at all. So you need to be aware that you're trying to look at that text and you're trying to put it into your own words.
And again, Miss, would you say it's because it's a 5-mark question, it's about putting the information in your own words, keeping it as simple as you can?
Exactly.
You don't need to do it like an impressions question or really sophisticated.
Yeah.
And literally boom, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with that information.
Yeah, that's it.
But the key thing I think for these are the fact that there's no quotations.
No, definitely not, because it's a summarised question and it says quite clearly there in your own words. So yeah, you should highlight that, because you know you shouldn't be taking information directly from the text. You should just be putting it into your own words, really.
Do you find as well, Miss, you know, if it's worth 5, this is what I tend to do, is I encourage students to literally number the points.
Yeah, you can do, absolutely, yeah.
Just going down, so that some students will respond in the form of a paragraph, which is fine, but I often find that sometimes they actually write too much.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, these ones here, when I've just looked at these now, I could have probably shortened these a little bit more. But yeah, you're right. I would try and avoid putting a summarised response into a paragraph, because you kind of lose track of how many points you're making there as well. And there should just be bullet points about what, you know, what are the 5 main things in that text that tell me what the disadvantages of payday loans are. So what 5 things can I simply put for people to understand? So if people don't want to read through that whole text, they just want to understand it in a short, concise way. You know, I just need to find 5 things, and it's just a list of 5 things that you're looking for.
So apart from my pretty poor typing errors that I unfortunately keep pointing in the chat because I'm going a bit fast, what I've suggested is something like a blurb on the back of a novel, for example. Literally summarises, doesn't it, what's happening in the novel. It doesn't give absolute detail, so it's that same sort of idea, perhaps a TV guide or something that summarises what's in the TV show in 3 sentences rather than explaining it scene by scene. It's that type of thing, isn't it, Miss?
It is. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okie doke. Right. So we're just coming to the end of the lesson now. So we're just going to check that I've been through all of the learn objectives. So I've explained to you what a low tariff question is on the Unit 2 and Unit 3 language papers. So that's done. We've seen a sample of the types of questions on the Unit 2 and Unit 3 English language papers at the reading side. I hope you now understand how to find answers for the questions, how to respond to them, and how to respond to a summarise or an explain question, a 5-mark one. So I'm hoping I've completed all the learning objectives. So it just leaves me to say that you know, feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A section. Next week's session, which will run at the same time next Monday, is going to focus on the higher tariff reading questions, those more tricky ones. So the 10-mark questions like synthesize, compare, impressions, how do we structure those questions? How do we find the information for those questions? How do we include our evidence in our response? So we'll go through those in more detail. As I said at the beginning, the sessions are all recorded and you'll be able to access them again. Okay, but
yeah, I know it's really late, Miss, but just quickly, if anyone has any questions, I know no one has been confident enough to put them in the chat as we're going along, and if we have, that would be quite funny because it means that I'm not sure where they are. You watch, this will be what's so funny now. Ah, right, okay. Yeah, hopefully you have been able to come up with they have actually come up with some of the answers, Miss. I found the tab.
Oh, sorry, guys.
You have. I've got loads of some answers here. They did manage to get quite a few of them, which is actually quite good.
Well done. That's our technical difficulties there, Miss.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I didn't know why it wasn't in that tab. No, they have actually. So thank you as well for all your contributions. Well done. And I hope that you've been able to self-assess as we go along on that. I think that's all good. And a lot of them, Miss, have been able to find a lot of the information. So well done, everyone. Next week, Chick 1, 2, 3. I know where the chat is now, so I'll make sure that I publish it next week. So sorry about that, but I hope you found the information that I was putting in the chat as I was writing helpful to Miss. Everyone's written appropriate answers as well, which is excellent. Which is great.
Oh, well done, well done, guys. I'm sorry we didn't interact there, but well done for putting those in. So fantastic.
That's me. You did actually have 100 responses, Miss. I've literally just found.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. That was me. That was my ridiculousness. Although it's very encouraging to see that interaction is actually there. So that's fine. Hopefully they self-assessed as they went anyway, Miss.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A.
And I'll actually read them this time, which I think you'll probably find is slightly more helpful. I promise I'll read the Q&A more efficiently next week, folks.
Thanks for joining us, and hopefully, I know some of you may be going into other sessions now, but hopefully, you can look back on the recording if you need to, but otherwise, we'll see you again next week. Thank you, everyone.